Hello and welcome to the 5 Minute Call. This is a podcast where we take a deep dive into the stories of the people that make theatre happen. Today we're talking to Alexia Khadime, who has had a fearsome career in musical theatre.
Alexia has appeared in productions which include The Lion King, Les Miserably and The Book of Mormon.
Alexia has also worked on the Rocket Man movie and is a Grammy-nominated actress for her work on The Prince of Egypt.
We're all about people's stories and how they came to be doing what they're doing.
Okay.
So tell us where little Alexia started singing.
When I was younger, I would always sing. I think the love for watching people like Whitney Houston on TV, the Pointer Sisters. I mean, it was so severe with the Pointer Sisters. I wanted hair like them. And I remember there was a day my mum was in the kitchen and they had their hair in a particular hairstyle. And I was like, I want that hairstyle. And I took to the scissors and cut. I cut my hair. And then my mum came back in the room. She was like, Alexia, what have you done? And I was like, don't worry, we can put it back, because I'd seen like extensions and stuff, but I didn't realise, like you can't just put it back. My mum was traumatised by that. But, like I love the Pointer Sisters. I loved all of that. And it was only when I got to probably about in my teens, really, when somebody said to my mum, have you thought about her doing like vocal training and stuff?
Was that a teacher or
No, that was just somebody who had said to my mum, like, you should do something with that voice. Because, I mean, whether it was in the supermarket, whether it was, I sung everywhere. Like, I was that child who would skip down the road and I was always doing something. I was the one who was putting on shows for sit down on a Saturday after ballet, sit down and everyone has to pay, right? There's your ticket, right? So now I'm putting on a show. Like, I was that with my cousins and stuff. Like, so, like, I guess people had heard me, like you should do something with that. And it was only later when I started to get my voice trained. But my mum did put me into dance classes and drama sort of classes, like after school or on a Saturday sort of thing, just to kind of, I guess, exercise all the energy, but because I enjoyed it. I loved dancing. I absolutely loved dancing.
was anybody in your family into that?
No. Really,
Do you know
weirdly
where it came from?
I don't really actually know. A lot of people say, are there like singers like in your family? My family can sing.
Yeah.
There are members who can sing, but nobody, it wasn't career bound. Like there isn't many that I kind of, unless I don't know. I mean, I'm not particularly too, like sure of that. But yeah, and like I do the figure skating, I did the ballet, I did like it was all just kind of good fun, so to speak. And so then when somebody did say to my mum, and I'd been doing like dance classes and all that fun stuff, like on Saturday sort of thing, and I started to get my voice, so I guess having singing lessons privately, and I was doing opera in my teens, and like I also was doing like the drama classes after school, but then school was important, so like I had to take a back seat a little bit on that. But that's kind of how, from going to those like drama classes and all of that, the woman had an agency and she would send me up for auditions. So I'd done TV work and stuff when I was younger. So I did Grange Hill. I did the Queen's Nose. I did commercials for like Chesington World of Adventures. I did stuff like that. I did the Bill. Gosh, is that still around? I don't think it is. I did stuff like that. But my first kind of theatre job was actually at the Hackney Empire with Susie McKenna. She gave me my first professional theatre job. And I was in that weird in between sort of like young sort of, I think I just turned 16 at the time.
And what was it?
We did Cinderella at the Hackney Empire, and Sharon D. Clark was in it, Clive Rowe was in it. So I met them way back then. Wow. And then after that, I then went on tour. Because I just was going up for auditions and I was able to get like jobs and stuff. And I went on tour and I did The Leader of the Pack, which was great. I played Ronnie Spector, which was great fun. So got to wear all the beehive wigs and all that kind of stuff. I then got into Lion King. That was in its early stages of just opening in the West End. And I covered Nala.
Okay.
So I was 17.
How was that?
17. Yeah. 17.
How was that?
It was great fun. It was so much fun. I mean, it's so funny. Like now in companies, I find that the average age tends to be quite young, actually, like, I don't know, early 20s, teens. Yeah. When I was doing it, I was like the youngest in the company. There was one other person who was 18, Jonathan Andrew Hume. And everyone else was in their 30s or early 30s. And it's so funny now how that's not really the case.
No.
But everyone else was kind of in their 30s. So I was really young in comparison to them, But I really got along with them. Like...
Were you still at school during this period, or had you left?
I was actually... So I stayed on to do my A-levels in psychology, English literature and maths. Nothing at all with the industry whatsoever.
I don't know, psychology's pretty high up.
I know. True. That's very true. That's true. And psychology was the thing that really... I was like, if anything, that's what I'll probably do. And then because I had got the opportunity to go on tour, I was like, well, this doesn't come around every day. This will be fun. Yeah. Bye, guys. Do you know what I mean? So that's how I kind of ended up kind of getting into the industry, and I just kept on getting jobs.
Were your parents supportive of that decision?
Yeah. My mum was always supportive.
Amazing.
It was, it was an opportunity, but I did like the mentality even when I got into Lion King was, okay, well, I'll do this and then I'll just have to go back and do, but then I got another job. One point I did some stuff in the music industry also, and I did also like Whistle Down the Wind. I did another tour. So I toured a couple of times and then I came back to Lion King. So yeah, and then just things have kind of like spiraled and done like a whole bunch of other shows within the West End.
Do you think you'd imagined that? No. Pre-15, had you?
No, it wasn't.
Seen that at all?
It was never a career in my mind. This was fun, and this was a moment, and it's an opportunity, and we're going to enjoy this and have it as an experience. But now, after that, we're going to find what the career is. That's why whenever somebody asks me, I'm always like, I feel like my career picked me as opposed to me picking it. And that's not necessarily the wrong way round or anything, or the right way round. It's just that's the way it kind of happened for me. I felt like it almost wasn't my choice.
When did you feel it transitioned from being fun, hobby, having a good time, to this is now a job, this is a thing that we've got to focus on as a career?
It was after, interesting enough, when I went back to Lion King the second time round where I played Nala, I was like, okay, great, well, I've ticked that off, because I remember seeing Lion King and being like, I want to play that role. That would be great fun. It's still fun in my mind, right? And then I've now played this role and I was like, oh gosh, well, I better stop thinking about going back to do that psychology. But then I auditioned for Wicked, Pippa Alien. I remember her seeing me for something else at the time. And she said to me, have you looked at that material? And I was like, no. Why would I? Yeah. Like, that's not a casting for me. And she was like, look at it. And then I was called in to audition for it. But again, I didn't think that it was really a thing. And it was really only after I got the job and done that job where I was like, oh, this is my career. It took a while because there was nothing informing me, I think, within the industry. I didn't know very much about the industry neither, that was saying there's a place for you here and this could actually be a career for you. Nothing was pointing in that direction for me. So, yeah.
Do you think that gave you permission to be more playful with it at the beginning?
I would say I'm more... I guess so in some respects, being that there isn't the pressure of thinking, I need that next job.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
what I mean.
There is that. And so there was, I think, less pressure of walking in the room and doing an audition and thinking, I've got to get this. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was, this will be fun, And I think audition rooms can afford to kind of change to have a little bit more of that creative space, actually. I think when I was younger, I was being even more so authentically myself in the room, because there is, especially having just, I think I pretty much stopped doing like drama classes at the age of like 13, like going to like the drama class on a Thursday and being able to see your friends and
Yeah.
you know, we'll do some improv and you know like so it's that thing of like, there's this fearlessness of, I don't know how this works. No one's told me how I go into an audition. You know, like my mum was always present yourself. Mum would always say to me like, present yourself. But like you would just go in and I was told, okay, you got to sing the song. I always was prepared. Like that's what we do. Do you know what I mean? That was just something that my mum had instilled in me from the get-go. But there was no hard and fast, like I never thought, okay, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. There was never any pressure on it. I think that's probably a good thing.
It sounds like a fantastic thing. It sounds like what
There was
many people are chasing, that feeling, and yet there's so much weight on an audition usually.
Yeah.
There's, you know, your next 6 months of paying the rent or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Yeah, there wasn't that.
Amazing to have that opportunity of
Yeah.
being able to go in almost with a naivety by the sounds of things.
100%. 100%. And also my mum also was really good at saying what's for you is for you and what's not for you, you'll be glad for it not being there. Do you know what I mean? And don't worry when one door closes, another opens. I mean, I don't know also if that's from when I was younger doing TV and like not getting jobs, you know, and my mum having to explain it to me from such a young age, that wasn't for you because you're going to do something else, you know, like some of that could be good for the youth of today, of that. If you don't get this thing now, maybe you're not ready for it now. Maybe it's later on. You know? Yeah. You'll never get more than your portion. And what comes to you at the right time because you're ready for it at that time. And there's something that you've got to go through as a learning curve for that future thing that's coming.
It feels very much like those experiences you've had early on have really informed these ideas.
Yeah.
Which I think is great.
Yeah.
How do you think that it has informed artistry? What I mean by that is like, do you think those early experiences and working on television have informed how you now approach a role and go about, you know, just work on a character and then going and performing?
I think there was something like that I'd learned before. You're winging it. In some respects, do you know what I mean? You really are, because you're just like, okay, well, this is how I would just do it. You're not even really thinking about all necessarily the layers. Whereas I think as you get older and you're in the industry and you're learning from people who are around you and what's not, that actually there's a lot more layers in terms of like how you then approach something. So how I maybe approach something now is not necessarily how I would have approached it when I was younger. It was kind of like all on feeling, and this is how I would say it, and this is how I would do it. Whereas now you're like looking at the more perspective of where has that person been? Where did they just come from? Why are they feeling this way? What is their relationship with that character? You're thinking about all of those things now. So even when I'm singing a lyric in a show, I'm thinking about why I'm singing that lyric. Whereas before it was you were just singing. Yeah. You know? Yeah. I think what is important now for me, even more so, is that I find it hard now to sing a lyric without knowing why I'm singing that lyric. It has to make sense to me. Otherwise it does just kind of, I tailspin in my head. I'm like, it just doesn't make sense though. But now I'm just singing these notes for the sake of singing these notes. I don't want to just sound nice. Lots of people can sound nice and it can sound pure and it can sound beautiful and be pitch perfect. Sometimes I want a little bit of that imperfection, because actually it's that imperfection that kind of makes it perfect, because we are imperfect human beings. And even when we're explaining things in life and I'm giving you a window into my soul or into that moment on stage, I want you to see a little bit of that imperfection. It's not about the perfection. It's not about that perfect note.
I really love this. I really love it, because I've seen a lot of interviews and I've read a lot, and in a lot of the things that in the way that you're described as a performer is very different from how you might describe others in the, like your performance style. And I think it's this that sets that apart. Yeah. It's finding that imperfection that actually brings more of that honest performance.
Yeah.
Anybody can stand there and sound pretty. It's 100%. Not a hard thing.
But the problem is that we can zone out.
Yeah.
no matter how fantastic that song is. Yeah. You'd be like, oh, that was really pretty. Wasn't that lovely? Oh, that was nice. When she hit that note, that was nice. I don't want you talking about the note that I hit. I want you talking about what I'm evoking in that moment and the story that I'm telling. Like you'd hear people say like, oh, I can't bear musical theatre. They're just going to break out into song. But it should technically be just a monologue. It's literally you being able to see this moment. You're getting almost like that. It's a zooming in. And sometimes a lot of the story is actually in the music and in the lyrics that you're singing. So why are we wasting it away on these wonderful notes and something that has been written beautifully? Fantastic. We love it when something's been written beautifully. But why not add the other layer of what you're trying to say? Because ultimately, I want the audience to be able to connect with me or maybe find something like they understand so they can walk away having understood a story and actually see the arc of a character rather than that was pretty. I don't feel like I've done a great job if somebody says, oh, it sounded lovely. Yeah. Do you know what it was about?
Yeah. How does that make you feel from your perspective? Because a lot of that is, I want the audience to feel this. I want the audience to take this away. What do you get from it?
I find for me, it's not about me saying, oh, I want to do this. And so that the audience go, did the audience feel this? It's not that. It's never that. It's so long as I am connected and I feel like I am telling the story and I'm being honest in the moment and present, because it's when you're on stage and you're doing the same show every day, you can get stagnant. Yeah. It can get stale, but the idea is to be present. If you were present and you were alert, then you won't fall into that trap so much. I'm not going to say it's not going to happen because I think that's just not humanly possible. But if you were present, sometimes an actor might deliver something to you differently, which causes a different reaction. And that's what you have to be present for. That might change. That whole scene has been now said slightly differently. Maybe the stakes are slightly higher today. So then that affects the way then you've sung the song. That then leads into that, you know?
Do you think... I have so many questions. So, okay. Just rewind for a second. Yeah. Because you were saying that at the beginning it was more of an instinctual thing. Can you look back and see... Do you think you can see what those casting directors saw? Because now we definitely see somebody with all these skills and all this wisdom and all this courage to do that storytelling.
I think they probably saw the potential. There's always potential in someone when they're able to read text and convey it. But then there are levels. And when somebody sings well, I think they probably saw the potential of what I had. And then I guess through giving me the job, it's then in the rehearsal room of them being able to then get that out of me, of how to try and get me to be creative and not get locked in. I remember when I was younger, actually, like if I got a script and I would say my lines and what's not, and we'd be in rehearsals or whatever, and I'd get into emotional of saying the lines in a particular way. And if I remotely was given like a note to say something in a different way, I was so held on to that way of saying it, I'd almost forget my lines. Do you know what I mean?
It comes back to the psychology of it.
Yeah. I always forget my lines because you're just married to this thing. You're holding on so tight, you know? Whereas now I'll get irritated with myself if I'm holding on to something and I'm not allowing my mind and myself to be more open and present to how I would react. And also not doing that thing of, well, you said it like this yesterday, so you can't say it like this like today. We can't do that neither, because that's still not being present. So that's also, so you might say it the same today and yesterday because that's what it was in that moment. But it's dangerous to get into the thing of, well, I sounded like this today, I must sound like this tomorrow, because then you're kind of trying to get a square into a circle. It's not working. And it gets sticky, and that's when it's not real, and that's when people can't connect. But if you're present and there, I feel like you connect better. I just feel like you connect better.
Do you have...
I feel more alive. I feel more like I've done my job. Don't get me wrong. I walk away some days and say, oh, well, that wasn't a good show for me today. You know, I've done that in many shows where I've been like, oh, today I didn't feel like I just couldn't find it today, you know. But you go back and the beauty is that you get to do it again, you know, and, you know, and you're
Do you find it easy to... Sorry, I'm
No.
literally backing up questions. Do you find it easy to get into a new headspace when a show hasn't gone well, to go back in the next day and be able to put that behind you?
Yes. That has been a learning curve also, because, you know, like, you don't want to get into the mindset of, well, that happened yesterday. Remember, that went wrong. So it's to let go. It's like, even I used to do this thing where I had to do the same thing. So weird before a show. I remember even being in Book of Mormon. Like, I used to be, clearly I was obsessed with hand sanitizer before the pandemic, but like, I always used to have to sanitize my hands at a particular time because I felt like it would all go wrong. So weird. Like, who does that? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's silly things. It's breaking habits so that I don't hold on to them, and to know that every day is different and you can only live in the moment.
Yeah, one of the big red flags to me when I'm working with somebody in a production is if they come to me and they say, so I did this show the other night and I knew that number wasn't going to go well because that note that I do, you know, 15 minutes into the show, that's kind of my check note. And if that one's no good, then I know the rest of it's not good. And it's super, super tempting as a singer to have those check notes, but actually really counterproductive.
Yeah.
Because you're also then just telling your story, yourself a story.
100%. Like, you could be in a show and you're like, oh, it doesn't feel as great today, but I'll be, you know, like, I feel like I'll be okay. Let's see how it goes. But then as you're going through your show, your voice cleans up. You can't measure it on the start of your show, because by the end of your show, you got all the notes, you know, like, you can be totally fine. So it's like, it's impossible to say, but I mean, like, you've just also got to know for yourself where your line is and when you have to actually stop.
How do you learn that?
It's the hard lesson to learn. Sometimes it is you going out there and you've pushed one too many. The following day you've woken up and you're sounding like Barry White. For you to learn that I should have never have done that. It's like touching the fire. Right?
Yeah.
Ow, that burnt me.
Yeah.
Hello, wake up call. And you can't keep on doing it. And it's the conversation that I always have, but like, no lozenge is going to save you. No. You just have to stop. I think there's a thing of people forget the voice is a muscle. And just like a runner, if he's just constantly running, it's going to get tired, you know? Or if it hasn't had the rest,
absolutely,
it's going to get tired. Right? It's going to get tired. But there is a mentality, because our voices are used to speak.
Yeah.
That it's just meant to, you're a singer, so you sing. Yeah. That's it. No, you are a vocal athlete.
Yeah.
That's what you are. And so it's going to get tired. And it's okay. You know, like, your range is not a testament to say, like, you're not good enough. I think that's also, there's a not so great mentality around kind of like losing voice. Oh gosh, she's losing her voice, or oh gosh, like, no, it's like, it happens. You can get a cold. Like, there are so many elements, emotional stuff can literally, like, if you're stressed, all of these things are factors for our voice. You think about if you're about to cry and how, like, your voice, like, completely, like, trips out, and you could have been totally fine prior to that very moment before crying. It's connected emotionally, and I think there needs to be a better language and a better understanding around the voice and truly knowing your instrument. People can give you advice about things, but it's important for you to know your own voice and where your limits are, because you can ask, do you think I should do this? But ultimately, only you truly know whether you can or you can't. But I say, if you're asking, you probably should stop.
Is that the answer then? So how does somebody find those limits for themselves? How does somebody know? Is it you go to that point and then once you have that realization, or
I
is
just
there...
think if you're trying to say, like, if you're warming up at home or something, you've got like a gig or, you know, and your voice is just not complying, or you've got it out a couple of times, all the other times it's not been, and then you stopped for a while and then you tried again and it didn't work. I think red flag is what I'm saying. Like, it's waving, and that's saying no, actually. As much as you might be able to push through and you might be okay, why would you want to go on might?
So it's a lot of mindfulness. Do you practice mindfulness? Do you do any mindfulness activities?
Yeah, I do. I write to myself. I do. I write to myself a lot. And it kind of helps me to compartmentalize and rationalize my thoughts. So I don't go down the rabbit hole. But I think it's like something that I've learned to do, because you can just spiral where you're second guessing, doubting. But it's good to kind of have some kind of checkpoint, even if it is just a friend, to be able to vocalize and help you rationalize your thoughts. And in this industry, ultimately, I think we've got to remember you are the product. It's not buying, I don't know, a bottle of water and saying this is the product. You are the product. So you're never really kind of letting go. To think about, like, if I'm doing a show and even if I've got like a day off or holiday or something like that, I'm always thinking about my tools. There isn't really a complete off for me.
Why is that?
I just think I've been given and blessed with a gift, and it's a part of me. And if it was taken away tomorrow, I would feel like I lost a limb. And that's no disrespect to anyone, but it would genuinely feel like I've lost a massive part of me, because it's something that I've always been able to do. Yes, I trained later on in life, but it was just something I thought everyone could sing. I thought everyone could sing. I thought it was just a thing, like talking, like breathing. You know, let's sing together. Yes, guys, let's put on this show. Do you know what I mean? But if tomorrow it was taken away, I would have lost a lot.
Did you spend time thinking about that during the pandemic?
I think even pre-pandemic times where, you know, like I've got a cold and it's knocked me out for a long space of time. That feeling, because I remember the first time having a cold that really knocked me for 6, and it was just taking ages for it to like come around. It had never happened to me before. Never. Like, my voice was there every time. Sorry. Sorry, guys. It was like there every time. Like, it would just be there. I would always be able to do it. And the day it doesn't, that's the fear that you feel. And that you go through a lot of emotions, and it really is a journey before you can get to a place of, oh, okay, you realize in that moment, hold on, if I didn't have this, I've got to look after this differently. I've got to make and I think that's probably also one of the turning points of me really, really knowing my voice. It's that low place of really getting to know your voice. Yeah. Really getting to know and wanting to know the actual science also kind of behind it, how your chords come together, what it means when you're coughing, what it means when you're even like, you know, like when you're getting things like postnasal drip or whatever, really what that's actually all doing, all of that stuff, knowing as much information, and the more information, I always want to learn more, you know?
I don't have a single student who's been through vocal trauma who isn't on some, and it sounds weird to say, but on some level glad that it happened, because they know so much more about their voice at this point.
100%. Yeah. 100%.
And very often say, as you're saying, that until that point, they're just kind of used to however.
Yeah, you're used to however. Yeah. And the thing is, when you're young, you got the bounce back. That's what I call it. I call it the bounce back, right? You've got the bounce back, and you recover quicker. You know, like it's great, right? But you could also be causing a lot of damage along the way. And then when it comes, it's not the nicest. And like I say, prevention is better than the cure. And, you know, like the more information that you can learn from when you're younger, and simple things like even vocal hygiene, of like making sure that you're hydrated and that, you know, like it's great conditions that your voice is working in, and that you don't just go like, oh, just because you can wake up and you can sing a top C, that you don't just wake up and sing a top C, that you actually warm your voice still into that moment. It's things like that. Just don't take it for granted. Like, you should just never be singing without warming that voice and getting
coming back to the mindfulness thing, I could well imagine somebody hearing this and again going down the rabbit hole of okay, I'm looking, how do you balance looking after it, having a deep respect for it and understanding its importance in your life with it trusting it and allowing yourself to live?
Mine came with just experience. I wish I had the formula of what exactly that is, but you do have to find balance in that it can't take over your world. I think for me, creating boundaries also has helped, and knowing it's okay when to say no. There's looking after your voice, but also not obsessing. You don't want to be in that place of where you're eating, living, breathing, it can't be that, because then your voice is under stress.
Yeah.
And it's not going to work. So you really have to find that balance. And if you are an anxious person, then it is practicing things like mindfulness. It is maybe doing some meditation. It is maybe talking things out, or however it is. I love baking, bake. If it's I love knitting, I knit. If it's I love reading, read. Whatever the other thing is to kind of balance yours. So you need to do like therapeutic things to balance that out. I would say though, with me, it has been kind of experience. And even now, if I get a cold, it's still upsetting. It's still upsetting when, the voice is not happy. It's still upsetting, but it's about talking yourself off the ledge. You've got to talk yourself off the ledge. Okay, hold on. I say to myself, have you had a cold before? Yes. This is literally the question you have to ask yourself. Have I had a cold before? Yes. Did you get better? Yes. And then that you might have the little mean man on the other shoulder saying, yeah, but it took you a really long time. But did you get over it? Yes. You have to keep on reminding yourself, this too shall pass. It's not here forever. It will pass, but you have to be patient in the season of waiting. You weren't meant to be there today. You weren't meant to do that gig. Leave it alone. And it's hard to find peace with that, especially sometimes when you want to really do something, or maybe somebody was doing the gig that you'd really love to do that. You have to learn sometimes that was not for you.
And how do you cope with exterior pressures? Once you've got your own head set straight about, no, this isn't for me and I need this time. How do you then cope with the pressures from outside saying, well, you've got to do it, or couldn't you? It sounded okay last night. Come back on tonight.
Boundaries. You have to put your boundaries in place, because people like to think of you as being a diva just because you're saying no, right? But it's not about that. It's about boundaries, because if I'm not okay, then I can't go out there and do my best. So I have to create boundaries of this is too much for me, because ultimately you're the one who's left to have to pick up the pieces. So are you going to do this thing of, I'm not feeling particularly too well, I'm going to do this concert, and because that they don't have anyone else, and it's last minute, I've got this cold the night before and it's last minute, so I'm going to push myself to this limit of doing this concert, and then they're just going to say thank you, and then you're at home and you're in bits and you're in recovery for the next 6 weeks. I think people don't really sometimes understand the mental of what that does. That is more scarring sometimes almost than not being able to sing a few notes that you need maybe for the next 4 weeks, because you remember it and it hurt. The mental scarring is a lot.
I think that's why the voice is so different to any other musical instrument. It's an instrument, but you can replace a piano, you can replace 100%. A guitar.
You can't replace a voice.
Yet it's treated
like it's replaceable.
As if you can.
No. They can replace you with somebody else.
See, that's the thing, isn't it?
That's
From
true.
their perspective.
Yeah. You can be replaced with somebody else. And I think that's what needs to be remembered. Like, if you can't do that gig, it's okay. They will find someone else.
Yeah.
And you'll get better. And guess what? If they have another gig in a few months' time, you'll be able to do that gig. And don't get me wrong, I have my moments of just, I wish I could have done that. Yeah. It's a shame. That would have been really, really good. And you think about it and it stews. ferments there in the back, right? But then sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm really glad that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that's really good that actually didn't happen. Like, something was looking out for me.
I wonder whether there might be people who are watching or listening who think, well, that's okay, from the point of somebody, a Grammy nominated, constantly working singer can now say, I'm sorry, I have to pull out of that gig, and has enough of a reputation to be able to then still be asked the next time. Do you think that's the luxury of having had a long career, or is it something you could have done in your 20s?
I should have done probably in my 20s. I don't think it has pushed me along for pushing through at all, because like I've said before, what's for you is for you, and it will not pass you. It's, for me, it's already written. Just because you're not able to have done that gig doesn't mean that it's not maybe going to come for you later on in life. Who put it on their Insta the other day? Someone put a post on their Insta the other day about having auditioned for something when a show came out. They didn't get the gig and they were so gutted. But now, years later, they have got this gig. And the understanding now that they weren't ready then for that gig, they can appreciate the journey in between because they've learned all the other stuff in between. So maybe you want that gig. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And you're like, oh, I'm ill, but if I just push through. But why would you go along, let's say if it was an audition, sing, then remember you having a sore throat, etc., and not being able to do it very well, then just pulling out and saying, I'll audition another time. You can learn so much in between anyway, if like in between that time, doing other stuff, whether it's concerts, whether it's workshops, whether it's whatever it is. And all of that is literally building you up for the very thing that you want. As much as it's like, oh, but you're Grammy nominated and, like you're working and stuff. There are moments where I'm not working. It doesn't all just flood in for me. I still have to audition like the next person. I'm not, do you know what I mean? Like, you've got to listen, you've got to come first. You cannot pour into anything if your tank is empty. You just cannot do it. It's physically impossible. And it's only a matter of time where...
And have you been there? Have you been where your tank is empty?
Yeah. I've been in a place where my tank is empty and I've constantly sacrificed myself. And I would say it is almost something like the pandemic that has made me say, hold on a second. How am I expecting to do this if I'm not okay? And I think, again, it's okay if you're not okay. There is a mentality that it's not okay if you're not okay. It's not okay. No, it's okay if you're not okay. This too shall pass. This is not for you right now. Mm-hmm. You are human. Just like all the other people who are like creating these jobs for all these shows and all these gigs and, all these casting directors, they get colds too. They have to go off work too. Do you know what I mean? It's just unfortunate that maybe when you got your cold, it's fallen in a time when you had this audition, or the fact that you are a singer, a vocal athlete, where a cold will affect you differently. Somebody who does a 9 to 5 can sit down and be like, oh, I've had a cold for a couple of weeks. It's going, but it's kind of still there. And I've still got a little bit of a cough. Unfortunately, that might knock you out instead for 6. Yeah. And that's the reality. And I think there is a mentality of, even pre-pandemic, you can get a cold and it can knock you out for 8. 8 weeks, it can knock you out for. And it's unfortunate. And don't get me wrong, you feel like you're banging your head against the wall. I'm not saying like, oh, it's fine, you just sit down for 8 weeks. No, of course you're going stir crazy. 100% you're going stir crazy because you want to get back out there and you want to be doing what you love. And, like being creative, we're creative beings. You have to ride the tide. And if you're frustrated, get those frustrations out, but there's no point in trying to do something before you're ready to. Before your body's ready to, because you're coming back, 50% better? How long before you get knocked out again? It's a countdown. It's okay, you got through this one. Okay, you got through that one. I'm getting a bit tired now. Nah, I can't do 3, that's enough. then you're in this stop, start. And then that's a whole other mental game. You have to pick almost like your poison. You know, you have to pick and you have to make a decision to say, hold on, actually, I'm not okay. Me taking this little time off where it doesn't feel 100% all right. And I know that I'm pushing myself to achieve something is not worth it, because the aftermath of that and what I'm going to have to deal with, apart from me getting myself back in a good vocal place, it's the mental and the emotional and the spiritual of what that does to you. There are so many layers. It's beyond the sound that you're able to produce, because again, the sound is connected to you emotionally. Yeah.
Any disagreement from either of us at all. You were talking earlier about how you build a character. How much of yourself is present in that character, and how much do you give up yourself for the character?
Ooh, good one. I think there's always an element of yourself in a character, because it's coming from your lens. Even if it's, I don't know, if you were to be playing, I don't know, let's say a drug addict. Let's say, for the sake of it, it's a bit extreme. I have been watching all the crazy things on Netflix lately. So that's probably why I've come out like the drag. It would still be your perspective and your lens of how you're perceiving how a drug addict would behave, how they feel in that moment. They can tell you, but it's still your lens. So there's always going to be an element of yourself, I think, within the character. How much I give up of myself was the next part of it. I think you do. I think you have to fully surrender, to fully immerse yourself into a character. Otherwise, there are still too many elements of yourself, and then you're not really being authentically.
And does that then come into the being present? Is that one of the prerequisites for being present?
100%.
So do you have tricks for getting yourself to that place when maybe you don't feel like it?
Sometimes I do watch things, or like listen to things that would help with a character. Like I remember when I was doing Nabalungi, it was looking at the research around a young African girl who's living in poverty, and though it was a comedy, it doesn't have to be a dramatic piece in order for you to, it's always important, the layering of the character, but then also the innocence in the mind. And so I was like, I almost used my nieces for that innocence, that wide-eyed, is to actually believe it. And it's so hard almost to be young again, because we're tainted. Not joking. But the innocence gets lost as we get kind of older, because we see what reality has kind of shown us. So it's like to try and delve into that, and as much as possible let go into that belief, to believe, like to fully let go and truly think that there is this place called Salt Lake City. Like really believe it. And that's what makes it funny.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, without question. Yeah.
If I don't believe that Salt Lake City is real, then you ain't going to believe it. You're going to know that I'm just along for the fun ride of it. Yeah. But if I believe it, and that innocence in my nieces of believing things, and when you tell them you're just teasing them or something, really and seeing that in their eyes, that genuine thing, that innocence that a child has, it's like I had to do that. I had to pick almost a bit from them.
Sorry, you keep taking a breath. And then I go, no, my question. Okay, last one that goes alongside that is you have played some really iconic roles and roles that are in the big shows where there's a new person every 1 or 2 years playing that role. How do you deal with slipping into those roles? How do you manage how much of you comes into that? Do you think it's important that you have a new interpretation? What?
100%. I think it's incredibly important for you to have your own interpretation. There's no point in you trying to be like Jane on Broadway. You're not Jane. It's one of the things that I constantly preach whenever a young person asks me, you know, like, oh, how do I deal with this, or how do I do? You've got to be authentically yourself. You are not going to sing like Bernadette Peters. Don't try and sing it like her. You're not going to act like, I don't know, Viola Davis or, you know, Meryl Streep. Don't. You've got to be authentically yourself. Only then can you be the best that you can physically be. Having taken over from like lots of people in different roles and things like that, I don't think I've ever felt like I had to be like the person who was before, which I'm kind of grateful for. The whole point, I think, of like cast changes is that we get to see another lens. What's the point if you're trying to, it's that same thing of like that square, trying to getting into that circle.
Yeah.
It just doesn't fit. It, you know, you're not that person. You evoke different, your lens is different, your life is different, your background's different. So you're going to bring something different to the table. And that is the beauty of being able to see all these shows that have been running for so many years, a different lens. And that's why it's then sometimes like, oh, that's a new perspective. I never thought of it in that way.
You're talking about being authentically yourself in that moment. And by that moment, I'm saying like for the period of that production, let's say. But you've done some roles where you've come back into it years later.
Yeah.
Is there a difference then between
100%.
the previous authentic self and current authentic
100%.
self?
My lens is different because my life experience has happened in between that time. Comes with age. You do. And it, when you're younger, you hear like, oh yeah, people always say that, you know, like, oh, it comes with age. And it does. In the nicest possible way, it really does. And only when you get there can you look back and truly see it. It's not that your perspective is invalid when you were younger, because what you have been through up to that point in your life is valid. But the way you sometimes, even just in life, like the way you will handle something when you're in your, I don't know, teens versus when you're even in your late 20s is going to be different.
Which is so interesting, isn't it? Because it's the same character
Yeah.
that is the same age of character, but you're coming into it with new experiences that then reinforms that same character, which I think is so fascinating because you're playing the same thing potentially very different ways from not just yourself but now from everybody else as well.
You're just a different person. Nobody's the same as they were when they were 18. Your life experiences teaches you that. You know, you learn so much along the way, and that isn't just in your career but just in life, in family, in friends, in all of that stuff. Even when just going to do your normal shop. You know? like you learn different things along the way, and it teaches you. So life is almost part of the teacher of you being able to be a better artist, better creatively, have a wider perspective, as opposed to one that will be a lot more narrow. When you're younger, your perspective widens as you get older.
How do you feel looking back on previous incarnations of roles that you've reprised?
I'm like, oh, I wish I knew then. I do look back and go, oh, I wish I knew then. But then at the same time, I don't kind of really want to delve too much into it, because that was then, and that was my reality then.
Yeah.
So you can't.
And also, I think there's something, for as much as we're saying as you grow older, you learn more, which is absolutely true. There was also a magic to
the innocence.
And not knowing that we'll have brought something to that role
at
as
that
well.
point,
So you can be really comfortable about.
Yeah, it's like a new person who's
it.
been able to, you know, and as much as it feels familiar, it's unfamiliar, because you do just feel differently about it. You do look at it differently.
We looked at it vocally differently as well.
Yeah.
We've looked at, you know, what happens with the voice, how does the voice morph, and
100%.
And how can it be expressed
in
this new
new way.
I'd love to see a side-by-side recording.
No, don't do that. Nightmare.
I think it would be so informative to look at that, and it's like I'm thinking about students studying it and understanding those two different mindsets and perspectives. I just think it'd be really cool. But
Yeah, it does.
it's a shame. I mean, there probably is recordings, but whether they're publicly accessible.
So we're going to ask Lexi about her 5-minute call.
We are indeed.
What's this?
We are really curious as to what your 5-minute call is. What do you have a routine? Do you do anything in particular at your 5-minute call?
I would almost say at the half is when I start. I need calm. I can't have frantic around me. This is something, again, I've learnt. And again, it's that boundaries thing. Before I would never say no. And I'd allow people to just be in my space, and I'd go out on stage and you're just angst. Whereas now I need the calm. And then I might just do a few little exercises again, just to, yep, she's fine. And ironically, it's hearing Claire's voice that sometimes also puts me in check. That's it. You know, it's remembering, it's just like going over and remembering this is what your voice is today. You know, you adapt, you pivot, and there's nothing wrong with your voice. It's just sometimes we can mentally sometimes hold on to what you want it to sound like as well. I want it to sound like this, and I want to evoke this, and I want to, but it's just to say, this is you today. Be present in the moment. And also I go over like any notes and things that I've maybe been given and just truly think about them, and like also give myself grace in that it's okay if I don't get the note in one. Do you know what I mean? Like that it might take time because I need to make it feel normal. But then I'm not perfect. Sometimes I do tailspin. I was saying it the other day, I'm like, I'm tailspinning. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like I do tailspin. It's like to somehow get off the ledge. And it takes time. But my 5-minute thing is probably just a couple of exercises and just like a bit of chill, think about a couple of notes and just very relaxed. It has to be relaxed so that when I walk down, I'm not in this high anxiety place before going out.
We actually, at one of the other shows I work on, we instigated a notices on the dressing room door thing for people who wanted that quiet time at the half, because it can become so frenetic.
It can.
And saying no to it,
you feel rude.
Created a bit of friction.
Yeah,
so
and you
actually
don't
just
want
having
to.
the notice saying, and it was fine, you know, sound knock and do the equipment and all of that. That's fine, but you're allowed your own space.
Yeah, it's and so the thing is, that's not necessarily for everyone. Some people
exactly
need the energy around them.
Yeah.
It kind of, I guess, fires them up for their show maybe. But for me, I just need to feel like settled before I go out, just so that my head is clear. Otherwise, I just feel like I'm in a high anxiety place, and I feel like my head feels muddy almost going out there. So I do just like have a little bit of like, okay, they'll do a couple of those exercises. Lovely, fine, okay, that's good. Today, this is what it is. Do the best you can. Be present. That's all you can do. That's all you can do for today.
Lovely.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
I love it.
We have one other thing for you.
Yes.
We do indeed.
Scary.
So,
oh my gosh.
We ask
all
of our previous guests to write a question in this book that goes completely unseen by everybody.
We have not seen it.
Until I now read this question to you, and then you get to answer the question, and then you get to write one of your own for the next guest. So there's a question in this book that none of us know, and I'm going to read it to you now.
Goodness! I'm scared.
Oh, this is lovely. So this is, has there been someone who has been your greatest support, dead or alive, and given the opportunity, what would you say to them to let them know how special they are and how grateful you are?
Don't make me cry.
I know, it's
bad. The person who has been the absolute constant in my life, my rock, is my mum. she's wiped my tears. She's been there when I've been low. And she's supported from a young age. Like I said, from figure skating to dance classes to like just exercising things that were of interests to me, to her teaching me to bake, to her teaching me to knit. I mean, like literally, I used to knit my doll's school jumpers because my mum was knitting my school jumper alongside. She is my rock. I love her fiercely, and I don't think I would be where I am today, nor have the mindset and be able to cope with the adversities that I have come up against within my career, within life, without her. She is a phenomenal woman. Lorna Facey. And she's on a cruise right now, so
I'm picturing her in fabulously glamorous gowns.
Yeah, she's phenomenal. She has just been everything to me, everything. She's even tried to do reading scripts with me, bless her. She's like, this isn't really my thing, but you know, like she's phenomenal. She really is.
It's such a great question though, isn't it? Because it is so important that I consider myself very fortunate that I actually have quite a lot of people who I can take my thoughts to and trust in their opinions. But I was just listening to a podcast on the way in this morning with Richard Branson, saying it was always his dad for him, and now his dad's passed, it's his daughter. Yeah, and there's that person who you can go to, and just hear your thoughts out loud. Yeah, and
my mum's like, she's honest in a good way, you know, like even when I'm singing stuff, she's like, no, that's not it. You know, but she can it's funny, she's not a singer, but she would hear if I'm pushing. She would hear if I haven't attacked something correct. She's got the ear. Yeah. I'll give her that. The girl's got the ear. But she is definitely the person. She is my person for literally everything. I can't think of any one thing, and she's got great understanding. Like I said, my mum works in finance. Do you know what I mean? She's not at all within the industry, but has allowed herself to have great understanding for she understands I'm like, Mum, I'm on vocal rest. They get it. And I think it's all of her support, you know, where she's even helped the family to kind of understand it, and they get it. My family, I'm blessed in that respect. They get it, because I'm really strict about that stuff, you know, I'm on vocal rest. My nieces even know. I mean, I've even got signs now where they're like, oh no, Aunt Sex on vocal rest. I know what she's saying. I'll go and get that for you. Do you know what I mean? They know. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's just been something that she's been able to kind of create this space of safety. But yeah, no, she's awesome.
That is the most beautiful answer to that question.
So thank you so much for sharing your time with us and for telling us your thoughts. There's so much value in so many of the topics you've been talking about this morning. I hope it will be really helpful for people.
Yeah, thank you so 100%. Much. Yeah. And thank you for having me.
Thank you. This is fun.
I do appreciate it.
This week, there's 100 episodes easy just in talking to you.
I've got more in me. What more do you want to know?
How do you feel about a weekly interview?
Yeah. How do you feel about let's just ditch the format, just the three of us?
Yeah.
That was
Thank
amazing.
You so much.
Thank you.
For having me.
Yay.
Thank you so much for watching our episode today. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe so that you won't miss an episode in the future.
If you currently are or have been affected by any of the topics discussed in this episode, please see the show notes below for some helpful resources.